Welcome to the Dawgs Fantasy Football Podcast with your hosts, Justin Charles and Josh All.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Dawgs Fantasy Football Podcast. Josh, all alone with you guys. I know we had Justin virtual last week. I cannot get this guy back in the studio for whatever reason. But today, Justin is tending to a sick kid. He had to leave work early, go pick her up from school, take her home, throwing up, doing all those things that kids do. So luckily, I've got the one that I have at home right now, still young enough. I mean, he goes to school 2 days a week, a little preschool stuff, but you know, we are avoiding the major sickness so far from the kids. But as the years go on, obviously, my life's going to get a whole lot more interesting. So good luck to Justin. Hang in there with your kids. Get everybody feeling better. And hopefully, fingers crossed, Justin's wife will have a different schedule next week, I think, and he will be back in studio, I'm hoping, because we miss him on the main show as well. So I will do my best, as I usually do when Justin can't make it, to break down the fantasy impact, the fantasy results, and everything from week 8 of the NFL season. It's crazy. The NFL season is just cruising right along. We're halfway through the fantasy season now, with most playoffs starting in week 15, 16, and 17. So you've got up until week 14 to make those playoff pushes. We're in the second half of the fantasy season now. So, you know, I've got most of my leagues. I'm in 7 leagues this year. I went 6-1 again this week, but the one league I lost is like my main league, the one league that I'd really like to win, you know, if I can every week. And I am one of the best teams in the league. I've got Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, Justin Jefferson. I've got Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, Brian Thomas Jr., you know, I've quarterbacks. It's a super flex. So I got Dak Prescott. I started off with Anthony Richardson thinking, hey, I got a top 10 guy here. He looks like shit. We'll talk about him here in a little bit. Bo Nix, Justin Fields to start the season. But, you know, every time I wish that league had a league median, and I'm starting to kind of warm up more and more to the idea of doing the league median, because my record would be over 500 right now in that league easily, because I'm one of the top 6 scorers in the league every week. I just keep going up against people that outscore me every week, or I have a game like yesterday where I was in the lead all day, no problem. I'm getting a definite win this week. And then I go into Sunday Night Football. I forget, it was like a 10-point lead, and I have Dak Prescott, Jordan Mason, and Jake Ferguson. And all he has is CeeDee Lamb. And I'm like, okay, I'm definitely going to be fine. I've already got a lead, and I've got 3 players. He's got 1. And I freaking lost. I had a quarterback. I had who used to be one of the leading rushers in the NFL. I'm kind of done with Jordan Mason and the San Francisco 49ers. And I'll talk about that too here in a little bit. But that's just the way fantasy rolls. But again, if we had the league median, I at least would have gotten a 1-1 record this week. So definitely considering implementing the league median in that league, and probably every league that I manage. And I'm going to throw it out there as a change suggestion for the other leagues that I'm not the commissioner of, because I am in one league this year. We'll just talk about the league median. So if you're not familiar, league median is where every week you play an opponent. So you either win or you lose against your opponent. Everybody understands that's how fantasy works. But when you also have a league median rule set up, that means that there is also 6 winners and 6 losers every week, aside from the matchups. So whether you win or lose against your opponent, if your team scores in the top 6 scores of the week, you get a victory. If your team is in the bottom 6 scores for the week, you get a loss. So if I beat my opponent and my team was one of the highest scoring teams on the week, I go 2-0 for that week. If I get a win against my opponent, but they had a really bad week scoring wise, and so did I just had a little bit higher than them, and I'm not in the top half of scoring teams, I get a loss. So I'd be 1-1, and so on and so forth. So you guys can break all that down, but you know, it does kind of reward managers who put together a good lineup, have good players, and do everything the right way, and just go up against a bad, in a bad matchup and end up getting beat by someone else who's in the top 6. So just some food for thought in terms of the league median scoring, and we'll talk more about that in the offseason and everything whenever we're getting ready for next season. So let's just kick things off here. I'll just kind of game by game this thing. Thursday night we had the Rams and the Vikings. I had somebody in our Discord ask me they're asking for start-sit advice each week, and last week I forget what the options were, but I gave them my opinion. It ended up being the right choice. This week the options were Sam Darnold on Thursday night against the Rams or Caleb Williams Sunday against the Commanders. And the way Caleb Williams had been playing, up into the bye, now coming off the bye, I'm like, okay, they're going up against the Washington Commanders secondary. It could be a high-scoring game because the Commanders can put up points at a high clip. Caleb Williams all day long, because Sam Darnold, while I still think he's a good quarterback and I think the Vikings are a good offense, I had much more confidence in Caleb Williams having a higher scoring output for fantasy this week than Darnold. That one didn't work out so well because Sam Darnold, 240 yards, 2 touchdowns, not like an otherworldly performance from him, but if you're starting him, he didn't screw you over. Out of that, Justin Jefferson, pretty much the only pass catcher worth having in that game for the Vikings. 9 targets, 8 receptions, 115 yards. Did not get in the end zone, so that kind of hurt fantasy managers. But still, you love to see the high target share, and you love to see 100-plus yards. Matthew Stafford on the other side of the ball. 279 yards and 4 touchdowns. He did throw a pick, but 4 touchdowns, man. Matthew Stafford was lighting it up. And before the game, on Twitter and out there was some rumors going around that there was a potential trade in the works, or maybe some discussions between these two teams, the Rams and the Vikings, that would send Matthew Stafford to the Vikings and Sam Darnold to the Rams, kind of a QB swap sort of deal. Considering Matthew Stafford is 35, 36, maybe looking to retire soon, go to the Vikings. They're going into the game, they were 5-1, playoff team, all that kind of stuff. He could be the quarterback that kind of elevates them to that serious competitor. Whereas Sam Darnold, obviously, is a 1-year bridge. They've got their future in J.J. McCarthy, or at least the future they're going to roll with, as going into next year. So get him over to a team that does not have a long-term option in place at quarterback, like the Rams. So it was a deal that kind of on the surface made sense for everybody involved. But with the victory for the Rams, are now at 3-4, they're still very much in contention for their division. So making the playoffs is easily in the range of outcomes for Los Angeles. So that deal probably not going to happen. Although personally, I would have liked to see that for fantasy, especially from all my Justin Jefferson shares. I think Stafford throwing to JJ, whoo, baby, that would have been nice, but we're not going to get it. Kyron Williams, 23 carries for 97 yards. The dude is just the workhorse. And the big one in this game, Cooper Kupp came back 5 for 51 and a touchdown. That was sweet. But Puka Nacua was, I can't remember exactly now. It's been a few days. I think he was a game time decision going into this. And then, they said he was going to play. I think a lot of fantasy managers, I don't know how many people actually shoved him back into their lineups. I would have been a little more hesitant if I had him. I don't have any Puka shares this year, but just saying, okay, I've been getting by without him. I don't really know if he's going to play, all that kind of stuff. And how much work is he going to get coming back? 9 targets, 7 catches, 106 yards. So Puka is back. DeMarcus Robinson had 2 touchdowns in that game. Don't go chasing that. That was kind of a byproduct of 2 other great receivers being on the field. Looks like the Cleveland Browns offense, yay, can finally be played. Jameis Winston comes in. First time this year, Browns quarterback has thrown for 200 yards and 300 yards. He kind of broke those milestones both at the same time. 334 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 of them to new stud wide receiver Cedric Tillman, 9 targets, 7 catches, 99 yards, 2 touchdowns, 180 yards in the last 2 games since the Browns dealt Amari Cooper to the Bills. If you picked up Cedric Tillman off waivers, congratulations. I think you got the Browns' new wide receiver 1, which is fantasy relevant with Jameis Winston at quarterback. Another guy to talk about, as a Browns fan, I don't know how much stock I put into the Elijah Moore. 12 targets yesterday was insane. He did catch 8 for 85. Elijah Moore's been one of those really up and down players. He's not a high. He'll get high volume in terms of targets, but he doesn't do a lot with them. 12 targets, only 85 yards on those targets. But if you're in a pinch and you need wide receiver help, you've got some injuries and things, I think Elijah Moore, it would be risky. It's not going to feel good putting him into your lineup, but I think with Jameis Winston at quarterback, I think you can get something. And you're putting him in, especially in a PPR league. You're putting him in, you're hoping for 10 targets, 8 catches like this. Probably not a ton of yards, but maybe he finds the end zone, and that will save your fantasy day. Last thing here, Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb, not exactly tearing it up since he's been back. 16 carries this week, 52 yards, just 3.3 a carry. I think he was down around 3 a carry last week in his first game back. The thing to remember here with the Browns and with Nick Chubb, I mean, he had 16 carries. The next highest was Deontay Foreman at 5. No other running back touched the ball. I was not expecting this kind of workload for Nick Chubb this quickly after him coming back from the knee injury and everything, but it looks like the Browns feel confident. He feels confident. I think he is that 15 to 20 carry a game type of player. Again, there's not going to be a whole lot coming in behind him, especially with the Browns wanting to throw the ball more than they have in years past. The yards per carry, I believe, will start to come up for Nick Chubb. The offensive line is not very good this year. The run blocking, not very good this year. But the thing that I noticed watching Nick Chubb, and this is obviously you're getting more in-depth insight from a Browns fan on this specific game, but Nick Chubb will get hit just like Jerome Ford. Bad offensive line blocking, all the same stuff. But when Jerome Ford gets hit at the line of scrimmage, he falls down and he gets 0 yards or 1 yard or -2 yards, whatever. He gets stuffed a lot. Nick Chubb gets hit at the line of scrimmage and he will shift and move and push and fall forward, work his way forward for at least 2.5, 3.5 yards. So he's always going the right direction. And I think you're starting to see a shiftiness come back. You're starting to see some of the moves, some of the lateral cutting and all these kind of things. I think by the time the bye week is up, Nick Chubb could be looking much closer to vintage Nick Chubb than we were expecting. So if you can trade for him, if the manager in your league who has Nick Chubb, who's been sitting on him the entire season, is kind of disappointed with these first two games back from injury for Nick Chubb, maybe see if you can go acquire Nick Chubb. He's a guy that I wouldn't mind trading for right now, especially if I've got decent or adequate running backs to get me through the next 2 weeks, because it's the Chargers and then it's the bye week for the Browns. But coming out of that, it's New Orleans, and I think that would be a great spot to fire up Nick Chubb and get his first real big game of the season. On the other side of the ball, Lamar Jackson, 289-2. He put up 46 rushing yards, no scores on the ground, but he did Lamar Jackson things. Derrick Henry had a decent game rushing, but a lot of his production, he was 11 for 73 and a touchdown, but 39 of those 73 came on one carry, one big long carry. So the Browns did a pretty good job bottling up King Henry. Kind of a down week for him in terms of like the rushing output that you've been getting from him. But I think that all comes right back. The Browns have actually been a pretty good defense against the run. So all in all, a good game for Derrick Henry considering what he was going up against. And then receiving-wise, Zay Flowers, man, 12 targets, 7 catches, 115 yards. The dude was their only receiver worth playing, because Rashad Bateman, 5 targets, 1 catch for 28 yards, and the most atrocious, awful, I just looked into the sun, can't see the ball, dropped pass that hit him right in the face mask, right between the eyes and the face mask, and it was like, oh my gosh, because he was wide open. He was wide open. Number one, Lamar Jackson waited way too long to throw the ball, didn't see him in time, because if he would have threw it a little sooner and led him, he was wide. He was gone. Rashad Bateman was to the end zone, touchdown, and instead he underthrew it and hit him right in the face mask. Yeah, I don't think Bateman had any idea where that ball was. And then Mark Andrews, he continues to make my decision to drop him, 6 weeks ago look bad. 5 catches, 36 yards, another touchdown. So he's definitely getting more involved in the offense as things go along. Jets, Patriots. Jets season probably done. They just lost to the Patriots. 25-22. They're now 2-6. Both teams are 2-6. I don't know, guys. I don't know what to tell you about the Jets. It's not good. It's not good. And looking through the game and everything, I don't really know how they lost. They didn't turn the ball over. They played pretty good defense against the Patriots. They're not very good. Aaron Rodgers, 233-2. No interceptions. Like I said, no turnovers in this game. The running back carry is a little more concerning in this one. Breece Hall, 16 for 80. But Braylon Allen, 12 carries, just 4 fewer than Breece. Only 32 yards, 2.7 a carry, but he did get the one rushing touchdown, which every Breece Hall manager, including myself, was not happy about. Garrett Wilson continues to be the leading receiver despite Davante Adams' arrival. 8 targets, 5 catches, 113 yards. Davante Adams, 6 targets, 4 catches, 54 yards, and then Tyler Conklin, the tight end, got the 42 on 3 catches for the touchdown. Xavier Gibson got the other touchdown from Aaron Rodgers. On the Patriots side, Drake May was 3 for 6 for 23 yards and a 46 yards on the ground and a rushing touchdown before he went out with a concussion. Jacoby Brissett came in, finished the game, 132 yards, no passing touchdowns in the game. Ramondre Stevenson chugged his way through 20 carries to somehow get 48 yards, 2.4 a carry, but he did get 2 touchdowns. In the receiving game, if you've been picking up and playing Hunter Henry, another game where he had 5 for 45, again, not great, but he's not goosing you. He's in the tight end landscape of fantasy football, 5 for 45 on 6 targets. That'll get it done most weeks. And Kayshon Boutte continues to be an interesting receiver for the Patriots. They're clearly not interested in either the rookies, Javon Baker or Jalen Polk. I think for redraft purposes, those guys can be completely forgotten about. Demario Douglas, this is not a guy you can rely on in any sort of weekly fashion. Maybe in a good matchup, but he's more of a risk Hail Mary flex spot start type of player. But Kayshon Boutte, 6 targets, only 3 catches, only 46 yards. He was the leading receiver for the team, but it hasn't been incredible for him, but his involvement is coming up. He was a guy last year coming out of LSU. Earlier in his LSU career, scouts thought, hey, this could be a first-round pick. He's got that kind of talent, skill set, and everything. And then he just kind of had the whole lack of effort, wasn't really focused kind of thing going on at LSU throughout his career, and his draft stock plummeted, ended up going, I think, in like the 6th round or something to the Patriots last year. Got the rookie treatment that New England always gives, barely saw the field, wasn't doing much. Involvement's starting to go up. So he's a guy that I'm not saying go pick up Kayshon Boutte, but I'm saying just be mindful of the situation, especially if Drake May is going to come back, because he's clearly a better quarterback, passer, and everything than Jacoby Brissett. This episode is brought to you by Baden Sports. Baden Sports is your one-stop shop for all your athletic gear. Baden started out perfecting and manufacturing the best balls in the business. Yeah, if that sounded dirty, that's more about your mind than my words. But hey, it's true. Baseballs, softballs, footballs, basketballs, volleyballs, soccer balls, you name it, and Baden has engineered the highest standard sports balls available. And now they offer more than just sports balls. If you got kids playing baseball or softball, Baden has batting gloves and bats to go along with both game balls and training balls. If you're into basketball, Baden makes basketball specifically for indoor or outdoor use. Heck, Baden even has all the equipment you need for pickleball, which is one sport that I hear everyone is playing, and yet I still never have. And I need to fix that soon. But don't miss the backyard games section of Baden's website, where you can order everything you need for this upcoming outdoor season. Pool balls, backyard volleyball nets, croquet, bocce, horseshoes, cornhole, and more. Right now, you can get 10% off your entire order at Baden Sports, BADEN Sports.com/dogs, DAWGS, and use promo code DOGS when you check out. That's 10% off all the top quality sporting gear you need this season. BadenSports.com/dogs. The Eagles came into Cincinnati and just beat down the Bengals 37-17. Jalen Hurts finally starting to really pay off for the high draft cost that you had to get him. 1 passing touchdown through the air, 236 yards, but 37 yards on the ground with 3 rushing touchdowns. That'll get it done for fantasy any day of the week. Saquon Barkley just continues his push to be the number 1 fantasy running back this year. 22 carries, 108 yards, no touchdowns, but he had a really, really solid game on the ground. Devontae Smith, Leading receiver for the Eagles, 6 receptions, 85 yards, and a touchdown. Nice long touchdown there from Jalen Hurts. A.J. Brown, 5 for 84. And that's pretty much it. I know some people talk about Grant Calcaterra, the backup tight end, as long as Dallas Goedert is out. Like if you're in desperation mode at tight end and all the what do I want to say? The pickups, the waiver pickups that make sense, the obvious guys are all taken. They're all gone. You can't get your hands on anybody. Grant Calcaterra, tight end for the Philadelphia Eagles, as long as Dallas Goedert is out with the injury, Calcaterra can be a playable tight end. Just 3 targets. He did catch all 3 for 58 yards. So that would have been it didn't tank your team type of performance from the tight end position. So he's a name to keep in mind. On the Bengals side, Joe Burrow, kind of a down week for him, 234-1 with the 1 interception. Chase Brown, just 12 carries for 32 yards, but he did get the touchdown. He is definitely the Bengals' number 1 back. It is not Zach Moss, only had 5 carries for 11 yards. Neither one, 2.7 for Chase Brown, 2.2 for Zach Moss. It's not great, but the Eagles kind of shut down their running game. Mike Gesicki, the leader in passing yards, 7 catches for 73 yards. Jamar Chase had 9 on 11 targets, 54 yards, and a touchdown. Jermaine Burton, look at that, getting involved a little bit. Just 1 catch for 41 yards. Eric All Jr., the tight end, another guy that, if he is not you're not picking up any sort of shares of Eric All Jr., putting him in your lineup and expecting anything special. Eric All, 2 targets, 2 catches, 32 yards. He's the type of tight end that if I just need to make sure I don't get 0 from my tight end spot, he's a guy you can look at. Packers, Jordan Love, I know he ended up with a groin injury, had to go out of the game. I think everything came back positive on his testing, so we'll see if he's available next week to play Detroit. Josh Jacobs, though, this is the type of running back utilization we want from our guys. 25 carries. The next highest out of a running back was 4. 25 for 127 and 2. What a stud game for Josh Jacobs. I don't know what to say. That's what you want to see. Tucker Kraft continues to be the leader for this team in receiving. 3 catches, 78 yards, and a touchdown. Not a whole lot going around here when Malik Willis came in to spell Jordan Love. Only threw 5 passes, completed 4 of them. But they leaned heavily on Josh Jacobs in the ground game in this one. Some guys that I'm so frustrated with the Packers receiving options. We can talk about it real quick. Dontavian Wicks, 2 targets, 2 catches, 11 yards. You can drop him. Without an injury to anybody else, he's not really usable. Jaden Reed, after a down week last week, comes back, just catches 2 passes for 55 yards. The 55 yards is okay on the 2 passes, but you would like to see a guy like him get more work than that. He's a shaky start right now. Romeo Doubs, kind of the leader here, 6 targets. He did catch 3 for 72, but that's not really moving the needle too much for your team. And then Christian Watson, 4 for 39. I think he's droppable as well. This team, I could see this team, especially with these injuries to Jordan Love that seem to keep happening to him this season. It is going to be a heavy focus on the run game with Josh Jacobs, which makes Marshawn Lloyd the rookie backup who's been on IR. I don't even think he's back yet, dealing with the hamstring injury. If he comes back and anything were to happen to Josh Jacobs, makes him an interesting add, just a guy to keep an eye on. And I think they're going to run through Tucker Kraft. I think Tucker Kraft has shown that he is a reliable option in the receiving game, and he's kind of a stud. So if you got Tucker Kraft, good for you, because I think, the volume hasn't been high, but he does a lot with it. And I think the volume is only going to increase as the season goes on. On the other side of the ball, Trevor Lawrence, 308 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. So not a bad game from him if you were starting him, maybe in like a super flex spot. Tank Bigsby, 18 carries on the ground, 78 yards. Travis Etienne out of this one, so Tank got all the work to himself yet again. The Packers are not just an easy defense to go up against, and I think that's a pretty nice output on the ground for him. Considering Dearness Johnson's the only other running back who touched the ball, and he got 1 carry. So as long as Etienne is out, I think Tank is an every week startable player until ETN comes back. Once ETN comes back, we'll have to see. We will have to see how the split goes, what the workload looks like. But Tank has definitely earned himself a role on this team moving forward. Receiving-wise, Brian Thomas led 3 for 60 and a touchdown. He did get the rib injury. I think everything, the MRI and stuff came back negative. So they were looking for broken ribs, fractured ribs, and everything. Everything was negative. So whether or not he's able to play this week or he's going to take a week off, we will see. But this game was a big one for injuries because, like I just said, Brian Thomas Jr. out of the game, could end up being out this coming week. Christian Kirk out of the game, broken collarbone, done for the season. And then, I guess he didn't even catch a ball. Gabe Davis left this game as well. I forget what his injury even was. All that says to me, if you've got Evan Ingram, you're going to be okay at tight end. He had only 4 catches on 5 targets for 36 yards and a touchdown this week, so it was a good week for him with that touchdown in there, but I think he's going to get more targets. Obviously, with all the receivers going down, with Christian Kirk going down, my first gut feeling was, Evan Ingram could eat even more in that intermediate area, and it makes a guy like Parker Washington a little more interesting. Receiver for the Jags, 3 for 46 on 4 targets, but if Gabe Davis is out, if Christian Kirk's going to miss time, Christian Kirk is out, and if Gabe Davis misses any time, Parker Washington becomes an interesting name to monitor on your waivers. All right, so the Lions just completely destroyed the Titans 52-14. What a weird game. I was following along on this one, and looking at how the Titans were performing on offense was like, okay, how are they not more in this game? Mason Rudolph had either 2 interceptions, but 266 and 1. He did have 29 yards on the ground and a rushing touchdown. Tony Pollard, 20 carries, 94 yards. He is the workhorse back for the Titans as long as Tyjae Spears is out. And even when Spears comes back, Tony Pollard is still the main guy and still an every week playable asset. The big storyline here for the Titans, Calvin Ridley, 15 targets. Nothing new there because he has been hyper-targeted like crazy for the last 3 or 4 weeks, maybe the last month, with no production. Yesterday, 10 catches, 143 yards. Massive day through the air for Calvin Ridley. And that's with DeAndre Hopkins gone. So maybe there's some life in Calvin Ridley after all. We'll see. I have a hard time putting any stock into this Titans team. They're terrible, but the targets are definitely there for Calvin Ridley. So if you're going to start Calvin Ridley, I'm not saying don't start him. I'm not saying you have to start him. But if you're going to go ahead and gamble and shoot for that upside, just know that a 10 for 150 is possible with him. A 1 for 3 is also possible with him. So just be expecting the whole range of outcomes with Calvin Ridley. On the other side of the ball, man, 52 points. If I told you that the Detroit Lions put up 52 points on the Tennessee Titans, how many passing yards would you think Jared Goff had in that game? What if I told you they had 52 points and Jared Goff threw for 3 of those touchdowns? How many yards? 300? 250? 200? At least 150 or at least 100, right? No, 85 passing yards on the day. When you factor in 4 sacks for 33 yards lost, the entire team total for the day, just 61 passing yards produced, 4 touchdowns, because running back David Montgomery threw a touchdown himself. He had 9 carries for 33 and a touchdown on the ground, but it was Jahmyr Gibbs, 11 for 127 and a score on the ground that was just dominant yesterday against the Titans. Finally, we got a game from Sam Laporta worth talking about. 6 targets, 6 catches, 48 yards, and a touchdown. And if you're looking for anybody else on the team, I just told you about those low passing yards. There wasn't jack diddly doo-doo to talk about for any of these pass catchers for the Detroit Lions. Khalif Raymond, your leading wide receiver with 14 yards. Where's Amon-Ra St. Brown, Josh? Where's the top, the first round fantasy pick, the top 3, 4, 5 dynasty wide receiver? Well, he's down here with 2 freaking targets for 2 freaking catches, 7 freaking yards. Now, luckily, St. Brown did catch a touchdown. Otherwise, another abysmal fantasy output for Amon-Ra St. Brown. Very disappointing considering what you had to invest to get him and where you had to draft him. But that's the Detroit Lions. They're honestly just they're going to win games however's working for them that week. And if that means we can put up 52 points with Amon-Ra catching 2 passes for 7 yards, that's what we're going to do. So, a little bit of a pumpkin story here for Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers, who lost 31-26 to the Falcons. Baker, 2 more interceptions this game. I think that's 7 interceptions in his last 3 games. So the turnovers, as a Browns fan, I know this about Baker. The turnovers are going to come at some point. He did have 330 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he salvaged his fantasy day with a lot of that. On the ground, Bucky Irving, 9 for 44. Rachaad White, 6 for 29. Sean Tucker, 2 for 3. The running back situation there in Tampa Bay is just getting all kinds of mushy. And the guy I want is Bucky Irving. If I've got Rachaad White, I mean, he caught 5 passes for 38 yards and a touchdown through the air. So if you've got Rachaad White, he's not unplayable. As long as he's healthy, you can play him. It's just you can't expect what you had gotten from him the last 2 seasons. Cade Otton with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin going down last week and not being available for the Buccaneers. It was Cade Otton that stepped up. 9 catches on 10 targets, 81 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So clearly if Cade Otton's on your waiver wire, if nobody had picked him up last week and everybody was prioritizing Trey Palmer, Jalen McMillan, or Sterling Shepard, empty the fab clip on Cade Otton because he is going to be the type of tight end that can win you weeks moving forward with these other guys missing time. On the Atlanta side of the ball, Kirk Cousins, another massive game, 276, but 4 passing touchdowns. Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier continue to split these snaps. Again, just like with the Jets game with Breece and Braylon Allen, this snap share between these two is just not what fantasy managers want to see. Bijan, 13 for 63. Tyler Algier, 12 for 33. Obviously, Bijan, the more productive runner on the ground, but Algier, just 1 fewer carry. It's just kind of ugly. I hate that so much. The thing that helped with Bijan, he did get 7 catches, 43 yards, and a touchdown in this one. So that really helped boost his fantasy performance because the ground game just wasn't great at all. Kyle Pitts, 4 for 91 and 2 touchdowns. Darnell Mooney, 4 for 86 and a touchdown himself. Drake London, just 6 targets, only 4 catches, 34 yards. Kind of a dud stinker from Mr. Drake London. Moving on here, Cardinals, Dolphins. Fantasy takeaways. Kyler Murray finally putting himself a game together, 307 and 2. And on the ground, he added 19 yards on the ground. James Conner, 20 carries, only 53 yards, 2.7 a carry. So not great on the ground, but the only running back to touch the ball, Trey Benson, just 1 carry for 10 yards. So it's James Conner. As long as James Conner is healthy, start him, play him. No one else is touching the ball in Arizona except for James Conner on the ground. He did also have the touchdown. Trey McBride. Finally a nice big game from Trey McBride. 9 catches for 124 yards on 11 targets. Still 0 touchdowns on the season for Trey McBride, but those have got to be coming at some point, right? You would think. Marvin Harrison Jr. got back in action this week, 6 for 111 and 1 touchdown. Michael Wilson, 5 for 31 and a touchdown, but I believe he left with was it a shoulder injury, ankle injury? I can't remember which. For the Dolphins, Tua came back, and we finally get some fantasy relevance out of our Miami Dolphins assets for what feels like forever this season. Tua just 234 and 1 touchdown through the air, but it did open things up. Devon Achane, 10 carries, 97 yards on the ground, and he did have 8 targets, 6 catches, 50 yards, and a touchdown through the air. So Devon Achane, a massive game. Raheem Mostert, 9 carries, just 1 fewer than Achane, but 97 yards compared to 19 for Mostert. But Mostert did have the 2 rushing touchdowns. Tyreek Hill, 9 targets, 6 for 72. Jalen Waddle, 6 targets, 4 for 45. Jonnu Smith, 4 for 20. That was not something you wanted to chase. We talked about that last week. This is kind of a disappointing game for Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle in terms of expectations with Tua coming back against the Arizona Cardinals defense and all that kind of stuff. But you got to remember, it is still Tua's first game back. It's understandable it wasn't complete fireworks to, kick things off. Plus, they were doing very well on the ground behind Achane. So bigger days are coming for Hill and Waddle. Just hang in there with those guys. I know if you spent a lot of draft capital, a lot of investments getting shares of those guys, they have not helped you much this season. But if you've made it to this point and you're looking okay, ride it out, because I think things are going to get better. Colts, Texans. Somehow the Colts continue to almost win these games. Somehow. Even though Anthony Richardson is diddly dog doo-doo awful freaking garbage crap. He's not good. At one point yesterday, I think I was checking stats and numbers and things, and he was, what was he, two for 20? Something like that. And he was 2 for 20 at halftime or something. It was pitiful. This guy sucks at throwing the football. He does very little on the ground anymore. 10 for 32 for 175 yards, a touchdown, and of course an interception, because I don't think he can ever play a game without throwing at least one pick. 6 carries, 45 yards on the ground. Anthony Richardson has got to be on waivers. He cannot be on your team. He sure as hell can't be in your starting lineup. The Anthony Richardson, at least for 2024, the whole narrative about him being a league winner and a top 5 quarterback with his rushing upside, done, gone, forget about it. Drop him, forget about him. We talked about this the last couple of weeks. The schedule coming up for the Colts is not easy. It's going to only get tougher for them. He is regressing dramatically. He looks terrible. His completion percentage is one of the worst since 2000, I believe. It's bad. It is just all around bad. He's not rushing the way that you need him to rush to give you any sort of a fantasy floor to help you validate starting him. You can't even have him on your roster. Don't waste a roster spot on Anthony Richardson. There are plenty of quarterbacks worth streaming each week. He ain't one of them. That's just that the story is over for him for this season. Dynasty-wise, it just depends. Depends what the Colts, how they finish out the year and what they decide they want to do. But I got a notification here today. Shane Steichen was asked, if they plan on starting Anthony Richardson here in week 9. And his answer was, we're evaluating everything. So they're not even committing to Anthony Richardson as their starter less than halfway through this 2024 season. So drop him, forget about him. The dream is dead for this year. Like I said, dynasty-wise, we'll talk about that in the offseason. Jonathan Taylor, great game back, 20 carries, 105 yards, and a touchdown. He caught 1 pass for 12 yards. Josh Downs, the only receiver worth anything. Actually, he's the only player on the entire Colts team who caught more than 1 pass. Interesting. I guess when your quarterback only completes 10 passes the entire game, there ain't a whole lot to go around, but he caught 4 of them for 109 yards and a touchdown. It was on one 69-yard bomb. Big play from Anthony Richardson, and that was pretty much it. Pittman, 1 for 16, blah. Alec Pierce, 1 for 11, blah. A.D. Mitchell, 1 for 9. I mean, I'm not even going to say unless Joe Flacco becomes the starter again. I'm going to say until Joe Flacco becomes the starter again, because Joe Flacco will be the starter again at some point, probably starting this week. I mean, the Colts are 4-4. It's not like they're out of anything, so if they want to win games, they're kind of in the same position the Browns were in. If you want to win games, you got to bench Deshaun and play Jameis. Well, we didn't do that soon enough, and now we might be out of things. The Colts, hey, you're 4-4. You still have a shot at maybe making the playoffs. If you want to take that shot, you can't play this guy. You have to play Joe Flacco. This episode is brought to you by Danger Coffee. We talk about how Danger Coffee is made free from mold toxins that are in 45% of the world's coffee, but that's not all that Danger Coffee has to offer. Mineral and nutrient deficiencies are a big deal. They make you feel sick, tired, stressed, and they can give you brain fog. These deficiencies negatively affect your immune system, your digestion, sleep, metabolism. Have you ever wondered why you get an initial burst from your coffee, but then you get that little crash not long after? Danger Coffee's patent-pending process remineralizes your body with more than 50 trace minerals and electrolytes, leaving you more energized, engaged, powerful. These micronutrients enter the cells to boost performance. They bind to toxins to provide detoxification support. I know that sounds like a lot, but the bottom line, guys, is minerals matter, and most of us really don't get enough of them on a daily basis. Danger Coffee delivers micronutrients, plus it gives you access to the minerals you already have. Head to dangercoffee.com, use our code DAWGS, DAWGS, for 10% off your order. And that code can be used over and over. So you get 10% off every order you make using code DAWGS. It's time to start every day off with a cup of coffee that gets you going and actually keeps you going. dangercoffee.com, code DAWGS. For the Texans, CJ Stroud just continues to be a disappointment for fantasy. 285, but only one touchdown. This team, all they want to do is run the ball. This is very much a Green Bay approach to the week. Joe Mixon, 25 carries, 102 yards, and a touchdown. Nobody else carried the ball more than once. If you got Joe Mixon, congratulations. You got probably a top 3 running back the rest of the way, as long as he's healthy and doesn't miss any games. Anytime that he's healthy and in their lineup, he's in yours, and he's going to be awesome. As far as receiving goes, again, they're just spreading the ball around here since they've got Nico Collins on the shelf. Just waiting for him to get back to maybe inject some life into C.J. Stroud and get some more touchdowns on the board. Tank Dell did get the touchdown in this one, just 4 for 35, but he, like I said, at least he got the touchdown. Stephon Diggs, 5 for 81 on 9 targets, and I have not gotten any confirmed reporting on the knee injury, but there was a non-contact knee injury for Stephon Diggs. And all the reports I heard who watched it and evaluated the injury on tape said most likely ACL, most likely out for the season. So now you're looking to CJ Stroud saying, well, he's not doing much without Nico Collins. Now he probably just lost Stephon Diggs. I think they're going to go even heavier run, even more Joe Mixon. And yes, of course, if you can get your hands on Tank Dell, they don't really have anybody else at this point. So we'll see. We'll see what the confirmed reports end up being for Stephon Diggs. Saints Chargers. I hesitate to call it a game. Saints, Spencer Rattler, 14 of 24 for 156. Jake Haener came in 9 of 17 for 122. Nobody threw a touchdown. Nobody threw a pick, but it's just the Saints. After those first 2 games of the season, everybody thought, wow, this offense looks legit. They might be a legit team this year. They haven't won a game since. Alvin Kamara, 10 for 67 on the ground, but when they got behind so far, they couldn't really lean on the run game after a while. Chris Olave, good to see him bounce back, especially after he went out early in this game after taking a rough hit, but he came back. 14 targets, 8 catches, 107 yards. Add a touchdown or 2 for Chris Olave at some point this season, please, and maybe you get yourself the fantasy asset you thought you were drafting, because I took him in a few spots as well, and he's been so disappointing, not necessarily for him or anything he's doing. It's just the quarterback play is atrocious down there in New Orleans. Alvin Kamara, 6 for 55 through the air. Other than that, the only other receiver to have more than 1 catch was Mason Tipton, 2 for 14. That's it. The passing game is going to go through Chris Olave here for the rest of the season. Chargers, Justin Herbert, 279 and 2. J.K. Dobbins, 17 carries, 57 on the ground with a touchdown. Justin Herbert continues to add rushing yardage to his fantasy baseline, which is nice to see. 49 yards in this one. I know he's on the waivers in a lot of my leagues, and he's a guy that I'm looking to maybe pick up. I don't know, maybe this week. They've got the Browns in Cleveland, and the Browns have been doing a lot better, shutting down some of the opponents, but they're doing more against the running game, so I think it's going to be more of a slow game for J.K. Dobbins in Cleveland, and the passing game opens up a little more. So the Browns are sort of turning into a somewhat pass funnel defense. But, Justin Herbert, a guy I definitely would like to add to some rosters if I can. I feel like the Chargers offense is just starting to get it going a little better with the passing game. Ladd McConkey, 6 for 111 and 2 touchdowns. Nice big game from the rookie. You love to see it. Josh Palmer, just 2 catches. He did have 72 yards, 45 on 1 catch. But outside of Ladd McConkey, there's just not a whole lot to go around in terms of who you're even thinking about starting for the Chargers. A couple games left here, guys, so we are rolling. Just hang in there with me. Bills, Seahawks, another 31-10 Bills. Josh Allen actually had 283 in this one, 2 touchdowns and a pick. I I'm surprised he had to throw for that many yards. James Cook, 17 carries, 111, and 2 touchdowns on the ground. James Cook, he also caught 3 for 22, continues to be this team just wants to run the ball. The Bills love running the ball, and they're just going to continue to do it as much as they possibly can. Khalil Shakir was the leading receiver in this one, 9 for 107 on 10 targets. And after last week, the trade for Amari Cooper, getting heavily involved, on limited snaps in his first appearance with the team, came out yesterday. 2 targets, 1 catch, 3 yards. So if you started Amari Cooper, like I did in a couple spots, no bueno, not good. Dalton Kincaid just 4 for 31, but he did get the touchdown, so kind of saved his day there. Keon Coleman continues to be a startable fantasy asset, 5 on 7 targets for 70 yards and a touchdown. So Coleman, Shakir, Cooper, Kincaid, I think this team is just going to continue to throw it to whoever they think is open, and it's going to be a spread it out, kind of a roulette style approach to this team, man. I mean, it's kind of like the Green Bay, receiving options. Just if you got one and you need a guy in your lineup, throw him in and just hope the wheel lands on you this week. On the other side, Geno Smith, kind of the Seahawks started off hot this season and they've cooled significantly. 212, no touchdowns and an interception. So bad day for Geno Smith, who was actually their leading rusher with 16 yards. Kenneth Walker, massive dud of a game. 9 carries, just 12 yards. Ugh. Not good. Not what you were expecting from Kenneth Walker. Did catch 4 passes for 33, so that might have helped you, especially in a PPR league, but still, what a massive dud. Jackson Smith and Jigba, 6 catches, 69 yards, led all the receivers with DK Metcalf out. And honestly, that was pretty much it. Tyler Lockett, 1 for 9. Just a dud all around for all the Seattle Seahawks players. The game of the week that I thought was going to be a whole hell of a lot more fun than what it was, the Bears and the Commanders. Caleb Williams, like I mentioned at the top of the show, I recommended him to be the starter for somebody in our Discord. He goes out there and just does his best Anthony Richardson, 10 for 24 for 131 yards, 10 carries for 41. It's not going to get it done, Caleb. That's not what I thought. What he had shown in like the 3 games leading up to their bye was like, okay, I think he's a viable fantasy starter. I think all the analysts were saying that, like, especially coming out of the bye, going against Washington's defense, fire him up. Fire him up. He's going to be great. I know I started DJ Moore in a couple spots, just 2 for 27. Rome Odunze was the leader here, 3 for 41. Keenan Allen, 2 for 39. Just nothing. Just if you started Bears, you got absolutely nothing unless you played DeAndre Swift, who after starting the season looking like a guy who's not going to be in the NFL very much longer, now he's put together like a solid month of games, 18 carries, 129 yards and a touchdown. So the entire offense basically just ran through Swift, and if they weren't picking up yards on the ground, they really weren't picking up yards. On the other side, the Commanders, Jaden Daniels was a game-time decision. Came down to it with that rib injury from last week. Came out before the game. He's going to give it a go. He's going to play. And, wow, 21 of 38, but 326 yards. He got the last second Hail Mary touchdown, no picks, and he did add 52 yards on the ground. So Jaden Daniels just, man, does he continue to be an awesome fantasy asset this year at the quarterback position. Brian Robinson on the ground, 16 for 65. No touchdowns for him, unfortunately. Terry McLaurin was the dude through the air, 5 for 125. And then it was Zach Ertz, 7 for 77. If you got Zach Ertz, and he's a guy like we've been saying for weeks now, if you need that tight end help, Zach Ertz will always not get you 0. And he's got this in his range of outcomes where he can have a pretty decent stat line. He's not a big touchdown guy, but he's going to get targets and he's going to get some yards. And we say it all the time, at tight end, what more can you ask for? What more can you ask for? All right, Panthers, Broncos. Wow, Bo Nix, have yourself a day. 284 yards, 3 touchdowns, and he added a touchdown on the ground. Just a monster day from Bo Nix. He is playing Carolina, so, I mean, pretty much everybody has a big game against Carolina. But still, Bo Nix he started off the season looking kind of rough, but over the last month or so has really stepped up, leveled up his game. The opponents have been a little easier. I know some of them have been home games and all that kind of stuff. But what you want to see out of a rookie is development, progression, improvement, the stuff that you didn't see and still don't see from Anthony Richardson. So Bo Nix is a guy that, if you're in the streaming quarterback category, he's a guy that definitely fits into streamer consideration depending on the matchup. Jaleel McLaughlin had the 47 yards on 8 carries, but it was Javonte Williams who had the bulk of the carries, 17, only got 44 yards, 2.6 a carry. Kind of disappointing considering Carolina's terrible. They are a team you can run all over, and for nobody on this Broncos offense to really run that much, a little disappointing, but again, Bo Nix did do a lot of his damage through the air, and it was Cortland Sutton after, I think, what was it last week? 1 target for no catches, no yards. Comes out this week, 11 targets, 8 receptions, 100 yards. The Broncos are such an inconsistent team in terms of fantasy options and all that kind of stuff, but sometimes you just got to put good players in your lineup and hope they do good things. They don't always, but that's the hope. More times than not, good players are going to do good things. Cortland Sutton is a good player. I don't really want to talk about anybody else from that game. Really, Bryce Young sucks. Chuba, this was not a game to start him against Denver's defense. Okay, so one guy to really think about here, mentioned his name, I think, in the last couple of weeks. Jalen Coker, undrafted free agent out of Holy Cross for the Panthers. Now, again, this Panthers team is terrible. They are so bad, but, they still got to play 60 minutes just like everybody else each week, so they got to put players on the field. They got to throw the ball. They got to play offense. Somebody's going to be on the receiving end of these passes from whoever's playing quarterback, and it sounds like Deontay Johnson is definitely going to be traded before the deadline, which is next Tuesday. So we got 1 week. If they're going to trade him by the deadline, I doubt he plays this Sunday. I doubt they risk getting him hurt. So Jalen Coker is a guy coming out of college. I did some draft profile stuff. It's pretty high on him. He's a great athlete, great separator, great contested catch guy. Just doesn't have like the speed and the top college acumen to support him being, any bit of a draft pick. But 4 for 78 and a touchdown this game against the Denver defense with Bryce Young playing quarterback. I think Jalen Coker is a guy in a deeper league, and especially in a dynasty league, should probably be rostered because there's a chance that the wide receiver 1 position in Carolina is going to be open for grabs with Deontay Johnson moving on. And it's either going to be him or Xavier Legette. But even if it's Legette and not Coker, Coker's still going to be involved. Legette in this one, 4 for 34, had the other touchdown. But I just, from doing some scouting in the draft process and everything, I think Coker is he's the better prospect than Legette. But we'll see how things shake out here this season. All right, guys, 2 games left to go. Chiefs, Raiders. The Chiefs continue to win by the skin of their you-know-whats. They're not a great football team, but they do everything right to win. So they continue on undefeated, 7-0, 27-7 against the Las Vegas Raiders. Mahomes, again, throwing picks. I wish I had all the stat lines pulled up here for the season. Has he gone a game this year without throwing a pick? I'm not sure, but 262, 2 touchdowns, did have the pick, like I mentioned. Kareem Hunt, 21 carries, just 59 yards, but he did have a touchdown. Travis Kelce getting back in the swing of things here, 10 receptions on 12 targets, 90 yards and a touchdown. And Xavier Worthy kind of came through, 4 for 37. Not a big output, but he did score a touchdown as well. DeAndre Hopkins in his Chiefs debut, just 2 for 29 on 3 targets. Monitor that. I don't think he's going to be like an Amari Cooper situation, but it could be similar. It could be similar in that the Chiefs just want to run the ball as well. They want to dominate the line of scrimmage, dominate the time of possession, play good defense, because they just don't have the receiving options to really implement a heavy passing attack. So again, Mahomes, strictly in the streaming category of quarterbacks. Gardner Minshew on the other side, 209 and 2 touchdowns. Alexander Madison, it's the Chiefs, but 14 carries for 15 yards, 1.1 a carry. Not great in any way, shape, or form, but again, it is the Chiefs. If you've got Madison and Zamir White continues to remain out with the injury, I think Madison is going to be a fine play moving forward, just not in this matchup. Brock Bowers, 5 targets, 5 catches, 58 yards. No touchdowns. The only touchdown went to Jacoby Myers, 6 catches for 52 and 1. And that's your Raiders. That's your Raiders. That's basically all we're talking about for fantasy football. If you got Brock Bowers, you just play him. Jacoby Myers is a guy that if he's on the waivers, I would add him because they don't have any other receivers since they traded Devontae Adams. Last game, super disappointing for me and a lot of this one was personal. I took this one personal, but Dak Prescott kind of sucks this year. 243, 2 touchdowns late, but he did throw 2 interceptions earlier that kind of got them in a hole. He's not the quarterback he was last year. I don't know what's going on there in Dallas, but whatever. He just got his big contract, so whatever. I don't know. I'm very frustrated with Dak Prescott. This was supposed to be a much better season for him, but their lack of run game doesn't help. I can't throw it all on his shoulders, obviously. Zeke had 10 carries, 34 yards and touchdown. Dalvin Cook, the ghost of Dalvin Cook, 6 carries, 12 yards, whoop-de-doo. I mean, the CeeDee Lamb, 17 targets, 13 catches, 146 yards, and 2 tutties. Pretty much your only fantasy bright spot for this game was CeeDee Lamb. For the Cowboys, on the other side, for the 49ers, Brock Purdy, 260 through the air, just 1 touchdown. He did score a touchdown on the ground, 56 yards rushing. He continues to add some rushing numbers to his fantasy baseline that, Purdy's not been great this year, but as a streamer in good matchups, you can hope for these kinds of things. Jordan Mason, naturally the guy whose rushing line, I'm so sick and tired of the Vegas sports books and the impact on the NFL. You can't tell me there's not one. There is. There's way too much money involved with the sports books and all the betting not to have some sort of tie-in to what happens in NFL games. And I'm not saying that the NFL is rigged. I'm saying there are probably certain stat lines and certain players that are rigged a little bit to help out Vegas. Because I believe Jordan Mason's rushing line against this Dallas defense was like 89.5 yards or something like that. And I don't know how much money was put into it, but good Lord, did Jordan Mason ever not get close? 6 carries for 18 yards, 1 out with a shoulder injury. Then I heard a report that he could have come back in the second half, or like he felt good enough to come back in. Didn't. It just makes you scratch your head. This twice now this season we've seen weird injuries with Jordan Mason where he seems to be okay, but doesn't end up playing just so he can fall short of a Vegas stat line. Whatever. Not saying that's what's going on, but I'm not saying it's not. So Isaac Guerrero comes in, 14 carries, got the 85 yards and the touchdown that all should have gone to Jordan Mason, but of course didn't. George Kittle continues to be the guy for the Niners, 6 catches, 128 yards, and a touchdown. He is probably tight end 1 for the entire season moving forward. I doubt there's any tight end who's going to be a better start on any given week than George Kittle. Debo caught 4 for 71. Ricky Pearsall, the rookie filling in for the injured Brandon Ayuk, 4 for 38. I just think his role is going to continue to grow, so he's a guy that if he's on your waivers, you might want to grab him because this team is going to need wide receivers to catch the ball. And after Debo Samuel, with Jawan Jennings still on the shelf, and we'll see how long he's out, but Ricky Pearsall, they took him in the first round for a reason, so they're going to use him. So that pretty much wraps up the week of fantasy. I know I kind of ran through that, threw a lot of names, a lot of stats out there, but let me know in the chat or down in the comments what you guys, what did you experience this week? Which players let you down? Which players won you the week? Which players were your superheroes? And which ones pooped so bad in their pants that you just will never get the stink out? So we have that kind of stuff every week, and I love hearing it from everybody because especially like me, if you're in multiple leagues, I'm sitting there last night and I'm just getting murdered by CeeDee Lamb in, one of my leagues that I was really wanting to win. But at the same time, I've got those split emotions because I've got CeeDee Lamb in 2 of my other leagues, and I'm saying, well, I'm killing that guy. Now in the one league, I had no business winning the game, but CeeDee Lamb put me just enough that I pulled out the win. So it's just interesting to hear those types of stories, and I love hearing them from you guys. So drop them in the comments. If you've got questions for the week coming up, like I said, we've got the fella in our Discord who asks me questions every week about starts and sits, and I love talking fantasy. I love giving my opinion, giving out some advice. I follow this stuff very closely, obviously, and I've got no problem giving you my 2 cents on a player or situation and what I think. So drop them in there. Justin will hopefully be back here in the studio next week, and we can get back to our normal back and forth program. Hopefully my solo shots at this don't come off too bad. So let me know how I'm doing in the comments. Just all your thoughts, all your questions, opinions, everything. We love hearing from you guys. Appreciate you watching. Means a lot to us. We wouldn't be able to do this show, obviously, if nobody watched, if nobody listened, because it would be, just be a crazy guy talking into a microphone and a camera. So appreciate it. Like, subscribe, tap the notification bell, 5-star reviews on Apple and Spotify. All those things help support the show. We appreciate it. And until I see you guys next week, have an awesome week and get ready for week 9. Good luck, everybody.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Dawgs Fantasy Football Podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and follow the podcast on social media at the Dawgs Fantasy.